high side. Murphy shooting, save a rebound on the view.
Hey everyone, this is Casey. You are watching the Red River Duckman All Sports Network. We are coming down to the home stretch in the NFL season. It is week 16, 3 weeks left. 19 teams are still in contention to win Super Bowl 60. Excuse me. But we have two teams that have already clinched a playoff spot, with those being the Rams and Broncos. There's a whole lot at stake this week. But this time, just 2 eliminations are possible. So we're going to go into them, and let's go ahead and go into all 16 games because it's going to be very, very exciting. And we actually get an exciting Thursday night football game this week. We got the Rams and the Seahawks over in Seattle. And for Seattle, it's simple. The Rams are already in, but they could be in themselves and also take sole possession of first place in the NFC West with the win. But they can also be playoff bound if Detroit loses to Pittsburgh this week. So let's get into the Rams and Seahawks game. So every week the Rams seem to find new ways to win. And this week they spotted the Lions an early 10-point lead before running away with it. And Matthew Stafford threw an interception on his third pass of the game, but he soon rebounded, and he threw 368 yards and 2 touchdowns against his former team. Blake Corum and Kyron Williams lead a surprisingly good Rams rushing attack that is averaging 5.5 yards a carry. And then, of course, there's Puka. As long as he's healthy, the Rams will continue to have one of the best offenses in football. And he did have an injury scare in the game, but he still managed to go off for 181 yards. The Rams continue to look like the best team in the NFC week in and week out, but I wonder if the Seahawks have anything to say about that. But the problem is Sam Darnold disappeared down the stretch, and that is slightly worrying because you have some big games, including this one. Because last week, they didn't even find the end zone one time against Phillip Rivers and the Colts. But they should be feeling good about where Sam Darnold came from, because he ended up coming up big in the fourth quarter. He threw for 91 yards while leading the team on 3 scoring drives. It all ended with Jason Myers' field goals, who got the Chris Boswell treatment for going 6 for 6 in the game and being the hero for the day. A loss here would have been an all-time collapse by the Seahawks, but they managed to avoid the upset bid, and now here they are, first place in the NFC West on the line, as well as a playoff spot. And I'm going to say that the Seahawks will take out the Rams in Seattle. Next up, we got the Philadelphia Eagles, who will clinch the NFC East Championship and be the first back-to-back NFC East champions in so long with a win, or if the Cowboys lose to the Chargers. And this week, the Eagles will be taking on the Washington Commanders. And it took 15 weeks, but the Eagles actually managed to put it all together against the Raiders. And they got a nearly perfect performance out of it. Actually, their defensive performance might have been perfect, because the defense did beat up on Kenny Pickett with 4 sacks, with 2 from Brandon Graham, who recorded his first sacks of the season since coming out of retirement in late October. And the defense held the Raiders to just 75 yards, which was the lowest total they've held an opponent to since 1955. Yes, it goes back. Jalen Hurts has as many touchdown passes as incompletions on a day where he was nearly perfect, 12 for 15 for 175 yards. And this was a get-right game that the Eagles desperately needed. And guess what? If they play like this, they might actually go on a deep run and have a good title defense. As for the Commanders, this was a day for big plays for the Commanders against the Giants. They scored 3 touchdowns, with all 3 of them coming from 16 yards or longer. Jalen Lane had the biggest one with a 63-yard punt return touchdown in the first half, and Terry McLaurin followed that up in the second half with a 51-yard receiving touchdown. And those were the reasons why Washington was able to win. But the Commanders' defense deserves some of the credit, especially after making two big fourth down stops in the fourth quarter, including one that came after the Giants had driven down to Washington's 1-yard line. This was a solid rebound for a Commanders team that got shut out last week. It would have been easy for them to give up on the season after last week, but you got to give them credit for still playing hard under Dan Quinn. But I have a feeling it's going to come to an end. I think we're going to get our first back-to-back NFC East champions in quite some time. I'm going to say the Philadelphia Eagles take out the Commanders. Next up, we got the Chicago Bears and the Green Bay Packers over in Soldier Field. And they both have the same goal: win and pray to God that Detroit loses. Because if either of those happens, the winner will be in the playoffs. For the Packers, they ended up struggling in one spot, and it's stopping teams in the red zone, and that weakness was on full display in the GPS Bowl against the Broncos. Denver made 4 trips inside of Green Bay's 20-yard line, and the Broncos scored a touchdown on all 4 trips. And when your defense is giving up a touchdown on every red zone trip, that means the offense has to play close to perfect, and the Packers just could not do that against the Orange Crush 2.0. Jordan Love had a solid game, but then he fell apart during the fourth quarter where he had a pick, 2 failed fourth downs, and 2 sacks by the Broncos defense. And not only did it sting because they fell out of first place in the NFC North and they have to get it back, but now they've lost Micah Parsons for the year. And that might hurt Green Bay in the long run should they make the playoffs. As for the Bears, they ended up beating the Browns by doing the thing that they do best: playing smart offense and forcing turnovers on defense. Heading into Week 15, the Bears had forced the most turnovers in the NFL, and they added 3 more to that total with 3 interceptions off of Shedeur Sanders. And they also sacked him 5 times, with 2 of them coming from Austin Booker. The Bears offense did struggle at times, but that's to be expected when you're playing the Browns defense, one of the most underrated defenses in the NFL, especially with Myles Garrett, who's getting one step closer to breaking the all-time sack record. Somebody please put Myles Garrett on a real team. But Caleb Williams did look solid in spurts, and DeAndre Swift was able to average 5.4 yards a carry against a Cleveland defense that was only surrendering 3.8 yards a carry on the season going into the game. The Bears were able to take care of business against a bad team, and this is what you have to do if you want to be successful in the NFL. It's going to be difficult because I'm not sure if the Packers still have ownership over the Bears or not, but I'm going to say that Chicago takes out Green Bay, and we have another season split. We haven't had many of those in this rivalry. Well, I hope you guys like Sickos Bowls because that's what we got here. Both teams 7-7. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Carolina Panthers. These guys don't even want any grasp on sole possession of first place in the NFC South. Because let's be real, the NFC South and the AFC North, they are your sickos divisions for this year. And it shows with what these two teams did last week. Considering the magnitude of this game, this was a monster collapse by the Buccaneers. And they blew a 28-14 lead in the fourth quarter. The entire team choked, starting with Baker Mayfield, who made several errant throws in the fourth quarter, including a pick. The Bucs defense got steamrolled for 188 yards and 15 points in the final quarter, and 2 of their best plays went to waste because they couldn't fall on the ball after causing 2 different fumbles. But Mike Evans did end up being one of the few bright spots for Tampa Bay. In his return, he caught 6 passes for 132 yards. The only silver lining here for the Bucs is that their offense should be at nearly full strength for the final 3 weeks of the season. And they still control their playoff fate. If they win their final 3 games, they will win the NFC South. And that spells bad news for Carolina who had a very good chance of taking sole possession of first place in the NFC South, and they blew it against New Orleans. Carolina had a chance to put this game away in the fourth quarter, but the offense fell apart. A failed 4th and 1 from the Saints 35, and Young threw for just 13 yards in the final quarter when the Panthers needed him most. Defensively, the Panthers played at a high level for 3 quarters before getting torched for 172 yards in the fourth quarter. The only upside for the Panthers, despite the loss, they still have a chance to win the NFC South, even though neither team really wants to win it. So what do I see out of this? So this game is going to be in Charlotte, and I'm going to say that Carolina takes the first leg of what's going to be a mini sickos tournament between these two teams. Next up, we have the Buffalo Bills. If they win, plus if either Houston or Indy lose, they are in. And the Bills will be traveling to Cleveland to take on the Cleveland Browns. Whatever Sean McDermott said to the team at halftime, you might want to bottle some of that up and save that for the playoffs, because the Bills were a total disaster in the first half where they only totaled 76 yards. But then they went back to basics in the second half. They fed James Cook the ball, and they let Josh Allen work his magic. Cook had 107 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns in a game where with 65 of that, and both scores coming in the second half. Josh Allen willed his team to a win with 194 total yards in the second half, including a 14-yard touchdown pass on 3rd and goal from New England's 14. That would give Buffalo its first lead of the game. The Bills' defense was just as good in the second half, surrendering just 100 yards. Now, the Bills might not win the AFC East, but they proved they can go on the road and win in a playoff atmosphere. And that's good news if you're a Bills fan, because there is a good chance this team will be playing a road playoff game or two if you want to get into San Francisco. But then there's Cleveland. Shedeur Sanders played solid football in his first 3 starts. But, buddy, welcome to the NFL. Because Sanders got destroyed by a Bears defense that sacked him 5 times. The rookie quarterback was under constant pressure. He couldn't handle it very well. He threw 3 picks, and the Browns had 6 3-and-outs to go along with their 3 turnovers, which put the defense in a very rough spot for most of the game. Like I said before, you're only as good as your weakest link, and get Myles Garrett to a real team so you don't waste him. And with that being said, I'm going to say the Bills take out the Browns. It's already a lost season for them. The next game contains 1 playoff scenario and 1 elimination scenario. For the Los Angeles Chargers, they basically have the same scenarios as the Bills do. If they win, plus losses from one of the following, Houston and Indy, they are in. Meanwhile, for Dallas, this might be the end of the road. If they end up losing, or if Philly wins, they are done. And the game will be at Jerry World. For the Chargers, they had a chance to drive the final dagger into Kansas City's playoff hopes, and this is exactly what they did. If you're going to beat the Chiefs, you have to keep Patrick Mahomes in check, and they did just that. Dafe away and Tui Pilato, I apologize if I butcher it, they both sacked Mahomes twice on a day where the Chargers got to him 5 times. The defense also came away with 2 interceptions, including the game-stealing pick from Derwin James. The Chargers are now 5-0 in the AFC West for the first time ever. And with their defense playing like this is a historical season that could go very deep into January. As for the Cowboys, if the goal was to make J.J. McCarthy look like an all-pro, they did just that. The Cowboys defense had no answers for 9 and the Vikings offense, especially on 4th down when the Vikings go on a perfect 3 for 3 on conversions. Offensively, the Cowboys were able to move the ball, but they struggled to finish drives, and it didn't help that Brandon Aubrey had one of the worst nights of his career with 2 missed field goals. The Cowboys drove inside of Minnesota's 45-yard line in 9 of 10 possessions, but they only ended up getting 2 touchdowns out of it. With their playoff hopes on life support, the Cowboys need a win in the worst way possible. Instead, they're probably going to get bullied twice on their home field. And that's exactly what I'm going to say happens here. I'm going to say the Chargers finish off the Dallas Cowboys if the Eagles haven't done it already. Next up, we got the New York Jets and the New Orleans Saints in a Super Tank Bowl. For the Jets, they were forced to start a rookie, undrafted free agent in Brady Cook. And this game was destined to be ugly, and you can't even blame Cook for the Jets' failures here. This goes on a Jets defense that let Jacksonville score on 5 of its 6 possessions in the first half. And the Jets are now 0-6 against teams currently above 500. And if you watch them play, it's not very hard to see why. As for the Saints, they've embraced the spoiler more than any other team. Last week, they pulled off a shocker when they beat the Buccaneers, and now they topped it off by making the NFC South race more chaotic by beating the Panthers. Tyler Shuck used his legs to win, but this week he used his right arm. He outplayed Bryce Young, which should have the Saints feeling good about their future at quarterback. Shuck connected with 8 different receivers, and 5 of them finished with at least 30 yards. The most impressive part of Shuck's performance is that he did his best work in the fourth quarter with 162 yards and a touchdown. The Saints are not going to be winning the NFC South this year. They're not going to be going into the playoffs this year, but they might end up with the best divisional record, and that's saying something. And that they'll be able to hang their hat on headed into the 2026 season. I think it's going to continue. I'm going to say that the Saints take out the Jets. Next up, we got another Tank Bowl. It's not actually, no, not really, because the Vikings aren't anywhere near the first overall pick. But they might as well start tanking for a higher draft position as they face the New York Giants. Now, J.J. McCarthy looks to be the potential franchise quarterback when he showed that on Sunday night with his most impressive performance of the year. McCarthy threw for a career-high 250 yards. He made multiple big throws, including a 23-yard pass on a 4th and 3 play and a 58-yard pass on 3rd and 8. The second-year quarterback also fooled the entire Cowboys defense on a 1-yard touchdown run, with him doing the gritty all the way to the end zone. It's been a painful season for the Vikings at 6-8, but this might be the game that gives everyone in Minnesota a glimmer of hope for the future, including one guy in North Dakota that you might know very well. As for the Giants, they'd had every chance to win against the Commanders, and they ended up giving it away. One of their big issues is that kicker. Younghoe Koo missed 2 field goals to continue New York's season-long problems at that position. Maybe the problem is Younghoe Koo. The Giants also could not punch the ball into the end zone after driving all the way down to Washington's 1-yard line in the fourth quarter. There was another opportunity lost late in the fourth quarter after the Giants got a gift with a Commanders fumble in the last 3 minutes, but New York was unable to capitalize on it. This loss really is the story of the New York Football Giants season. They could not capitalize on big opportunities. Their quarterback got beat up, and Jackson Dart ended up getting sent into the blue tent in this game, and they missed several kicks. And the only thing you're good for is appearing on The Daily Show with Jon Stewart. And it's going to continue. I'm going to say the Vikings take out the Giants at MetLife Stadium. Next up, we got the Kansas City Chiefs taking on the Tennessee Titans. And this Chiefs offense was a shell of itself this year, and that's why they lost this game. And it didn't help that Patrick Mahomes is now out for the year, but he was a sitting duck against the Chargers pass rush that sacked him 5 times. He was not playing well, whether he was healthy or not. And with the struggling offense, a hobbled quarterback, and a team that has not been able to find a way to win one-score games this year, the season just wasn't meant to be. And now that Super Bowl hangover is now starting to hit. and now they're going to be sitting home for the playoffs for the first time since 2014. And it doesn't get much better for the Titans, which they only have one thing to look forward to now, and that's the first overall pick. And they are on the driver's seat with only 2 wins this year. Cam Ward engineered several impressive drives in the first half, but he also missed several big throws that you have to make when you're a 12.5-point underdog playing on the road against one of the best teams in the NFC. Tony Pollard did hit the 100-yard rushing mark again for the second straight week, and he's suddenly the one guy that the Titans can count on offense. And of course, even if the offense had been perfect, the Titans would still find a way to lose because the defense could not stop anything the 49ers did. Probably one of their best chances at a win in these next 3 games might come here, but I don't think it's going to happen. I think Gardner Minshew's going to run all over the Titans defense. I'm going to say that Kansas City gets a kind of a feel-good win against Tennessee. And now we have a battle of 2 more teams whose playoff hopes were dashed, and that's the Bengals and the Dolphins. For Cincinnati, this might be the ugliest loss in Joe Burrow's career. The offense looked completely out of sync, and Burrow did not help things by throwing an ugly pick 6 in the fourth quarter. And this marked the first time since 2017 that the Bengals were shut out in a game. And this was at home. If Zach Taylor wasn't on the hot seat before this week, well, his ass has 3rd to 4th degree burns at this rate because they are now 4-10 and they are now eliminated from playoff contention. And for the Dolphins, their performance wasn't much better because they got eliminated from the playoffs as well in Pittsburgh. And when you put the Dolphins in cold weather, this is what happens. They play bad football and they get destroyed. Tua has never won a game when the kickoff temperature is under 40 degrees. He's now 0-6, and he did not help himself here either. He took several bad sacks. He could not throw the ball away. He threw a pick, and he simply looked uncomfortable for most of that game. The Dolphins' best chance to win was to get their rushing attack going, but the Steelers managed to bottle things up, holding Miami to just 64 yards on the ground. The Dolphins have hit rock bottom during the third quarter when they produced negative 20 yards. Negative 20 yards. 2-0. It was that bad. The Dolphins have now lost 14 straight games where the kickoff temperature is under 40 degrees. And that streak is never going to end if they keep playing like this in cold weather. And as a result, Tua just got benched. And now Quinn Ewers is going to be taking that spot. Good luck out there, soldier. But you should be able to get a win against the Bengals. I'm going to say Miami takes out Cincinnati. But we'll see what happens. Next up, we got the Atlanta Falcons taking on the Arizona Cardinals in another tank bowl. The Falcons were eliminated from the playoff race, and they had nothing to play for on Thursday Night Football against Tampa Bay, except for plain spoiler. And Kyle Pitts, who's going to be a free agent in March, likely just made himself millions of dollars for that performance against the Bucs. 11 catches, 166 yards, and 3 touchdowns, all of them career highs. Kirk Cousins showed that he still has some in the tank in his right arm, with a performance that saw him throw for 376 yards, with 154 of that coming in the fourth quarter. The Falcons defense did struggle at times, but it clamped down on the Bucs in the fourth quarter, holding Tampa Bay's offense to just 28 yards. And they actually almost converted a 3rd and 28, turned it into a 4th and 14, and they managed to get the first down. The curse might be over. But the Falcons are still eliminated. Despite getting hit by 19 penalties, they still ended up winning. It was a sloppy win. But as sloppy Joes have long proven, they could still be good. As for the Cardinals, the game felt like it was over before it even started. They were trailing 17-0 before they even got a single first down. And that happened because they fumbled away a kickoff after a Houston touchdown. And they also had a 3-and-out in the first quarter. Being down 17-0 as a whole, you just cannot go and digging for yourself out there against a defense like the Texans. Trey McBride was one of the few bright spots with 12 catches for 134 yards and 2 touchdowns. But that's not saying much. You need more than one player to succeed in a team sport such as football. You need 22 out there. And with that, I'm going to say Atlanta is going to take out Arizona. There were a lot of good candidates for Sunday Night Football, but this is good for second place. The Jaguars and the Broncos. For the Jaguars, it's very, very simple. You have the same scenarios as the Bills and Chargers. If you win, plus either Houston or Indy lose, you are in. And for the Broncos, they have a division clinching scenario. They could be the AFC West champions if they win, and somehow, some way, the Chargers end up losing to the Cowboys. But they could also clinch the number 1 seed if they win, and if all 3 of these teams lose. Los Angeles Chargers, of course, then the Patriots, and then the Bills. There's a lot to play for in this game. And the Jaguars look dangerous. They came out on fire by scoring a touchdown on each of their first 3 offensive possessions. And that's something they haven't pulled off since 1998. One thing that makes the Jags so dangerous is that they have so many offensive weapons. They had 7 different pass catchers finishing with at least 20 receiving yards, including Trevor Etienne, who caught 3 passes for 73 yards and 3 touchdowns. And also helps that Trevor Lawrence is playing the best football of his career. With the Broncos and Colts coming up in the next 2 weeks, they could have easily been a trap game for Jacksonville. But instead, the Jags are 10-4, and they put this game away early. That is what good teams do, and the Jags aren't just a good team. They're one of the best in the AFC, and you could possibly see them in the Final Four. As for the Broncos, if there were any questions left about whether Bo Nix was clutch or not, he answered them in this game. He outdueled Jordan Love, throwing for 302 yards and 4 touchdowns. And the impressive part is that he did all of that against one of the best defenses in the NFL. The Broncos defense also proved that it could shut down a very good team. After struggling some in the first half, the defense harassed Jordan Love in the second half as he got sacked 3 times, all in the second half, and he threw 2 picks, also in the second half. And with the Patriots losing, the Broncos all of a sudden they have a number 1 overall seed in the AFC clinching scenario. And this one might be tough. This is going to be your coin flip matchup. It's going to be difficult, but I'm going to say that the Broncos win it by a hair. And I mean literally on the last play. It's going to be a good one. Next up, we got the Detroit Lions, who have an elimination scenario this week. If they lose, and God forbid this happens, a tie between the Packers and the Bears, and they are done. And they will be hosting the Pittsburgh Steelers this week, who are trying to stay alive in the AFC North race. They are still on top. They're still on top. They're up by a game. But if the Ravens end up beating the Patriots, it's going to be a very, very tight battle. This was a strong all-around performance from a Steelers team that dominated from start to finish, something that we haven't seen at all this season. The Steelers defense has been known to struggle when TJ Watt doesn't play, but that's not the case here. The unit shut down Miami's rushing attack, and they proceeded to beat up on Tua after the Dolphins were forced to start throwing the ball. Not only did the Steelers come away with 4 sacks, but Asante Samuel, in his first start, gets an interception in just his 3rd game with the team. And Aaron Rodgers is looking as comfortable as ever running Arthur Smith's offense. He was nearly perfect, completing 85.2% of his passes for 224 yards and 2 touchdowns. And they mixed it up in the backfield with 5 different players getting at least 1 carry, including Jonnu Smith and Connor Hayward, who became the first pair of tight ends to each score a rushing touchdown for the same team in the same game in NFL history. And after 2 strong wins in a row, the Steelers suddenly feel like the favorite to win the AFC North, but now you have a tough contest against Detroit. But a secret is out on beating the Lions. Going into week 15, the Lions were 0-4 this season when they were held to under 100 yards rushing, and they're now 0-5 as they were held to just 70 yards on the ground. When the Lions run the ball well, that allows them to control the game flow. When they don't run the ball well, that means Jared Goff and the defense both have to be perfect. And Goff did do a good job carrying the team in the first half, but the offense pulled a no-shows starting in the second half. And on Detroit's first 3 drives in the second half, they went 3 and out all 3 times, totaling just 8 yards. During that span, the Rams scored 17 points and put the game away. The defense has struggled all year, and this is the 8th time that they have given up 27 points or more. And with that latest loss, there's basically no margin for error if they want to make the playoffs. And beating the Steelers here would be a very good start, but it's going to be difficult, especially with a guy who loves playing in Detroit. And I'm going to say that the Steelers end up pulling off the upset. Why do I say it? I don't know. Next up, we got the Raiders taking on the Houston Texans. So it's not often you see a Pete Carroll team with no fight, but that was the case here. The Raiders have been bad this season, but this was rock bottom. 75 yards on offense, no points. It was their lowest offensive output since 2008, and also marks the first time in 19 years they've been shut out twice in a season. The Raiders look ready for the season to be over, and I don't blame them. But the Texans, they already had the best defense in the NFL, and their offense might have finally caught up. C.J. Stroud looked impressive, throwing for 260 yards and 3 touchdowns, and Nico Collins continues to be one of the best big play threats in the NFL. The Texans star caught just 3 passes, but those went for 85 yards and 2 touchdowns. And on top of that, they seem to have found another running back in Jahar Jordan. The 2024 6th-round pick had 101 yards and just 15 carries in his first action of his career. Don't look now, but Houston might be a real dark horse in the AFC. And with the Chiefs losing, it's wide open. And I have a feeling that the Houston Texans are going to continue the momentum. And I'm going to say that the Texans take out the Raiders. Pretty easy. Next up, we got the New England Patriots. Where if they win, or if either Houston or Indy lose, then they will be in the playoffs. They can't win the AFC East quite yet because they ended up blowing that chance against the Bills. But they could still clinch a spot into the playoffs if they end up beating the Baltimore Ravens on Sunday Night Football. For the Patriots, this was a monumental collapse to recover from. They ended up blowing a 21-0 lead, and the always accurate Drake May, who threw just 2 incompletions in the first half, went ice cold in the second half, going just 5 of 12 for 47 yards and a pick. With May struggling, the Patriots turned to their rushing attack, and that briefly worked with Travion Henderson, breaking loose for a 65-yard score, but New England only had 4 rushing yards in the second half outside of that play. And the Patriots are still in the driver's seat to win the AFC East, but that second half collapse is going to leave a bad taste in their mouth. It makes you wonder if they'll actually be able to win a game come playoff time. As for the Ravens, they ended up getting embarrassed by the Bengals offense on Thanksgiving, but the Ravens defense ended up getting their revenge. The Ravens had Joe Burrow rattled in a game where they sacked him 3 times, and the defense came up with 2 interceptions, including a pick 6 that Kyle Van Noy pitched to Aloy Gilman, who took it in for the score. Offensively, Lamar Jackson didn't put up huge numbers, but he did look sharp, completing 8 of 12 passes for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. The Ravens also got a boost from Derrick Henry, who topped 100 yards for the first time since Week 11. And with the win, they're pretty much still alive in the AFC North race with just 3 weeks left. But they do have a very tough schedule ahead with this, the Packers, and then the Steelers at Acrisure Stadium. But this is going to be difficult to predict. Obviously, the Patriots are going to be playing pissed off, and the Ravens are looking to stay alive. But I'm going to say that the Ravens pull off the upset, and we hear the Inzer-Mobile break down in tears because they cannot clinch the AFC North quite yet. Next up, we got the San Francisco 49ers. They are playoff bound if they win or if Detroit somehow loses to Pittsburgh. And they will be taking on the Indianapolis Colts in Indy on Monday Night Football. For the 49ers, they are the team that no one is talking about. But we might want to start because they are a very serious threat to win the NFC West. They did not punt a single time against the Titans. And they had 9 possessions and they scored on 8 of them. The impressive offensive showing was led by Brock Purdy, who marched the 49ers up and down the field. Purdy threw for 295 yards and even showed off his legs on a play where he had a career-long run of 26 yards. The 49ers offense is clicking at the perfect time because this team is definitely the dark horse to not only win the NFC West, but maybe get the number 1 seed in the NFC. Can you imagine if the 49ers end up making it to the Super Bowl in their own stadium? That'd be crazy. Meanwhile, for the Colts, considering their circumstances, they knew what they were going to have to go up against. And they had to play a nearly perfect game to pull off an upset, and they almost made it happen, especially with Phillip Rivers at quarterback, with making several throws. He had a chance to turn this into one of the most unforgettable performances in NFL history with a possible game-winning drive, but he ended up throwing a pick on his final play. However, it doesn't take away from the fact that the Colts were able to pull off one of the more impressive defensive showings all year by any team by holding the high-powered Seattle Seahawks out of the end zone. And they also let Jonathan Taylor carry the load. But even though the Colts didn't win, they did play well enough to give the Colts some hope down the stretch. It's not entirely over for Indy. But if they end up losing to the 49ers, they're going to have to rethink their strategy. But I'm going to say that the 49ers take out the Colts. But that is going to do it for me. Please feel free to like, comment, share this with your friends, and of course, subscribe to the Red Rubber Duck One All Sports Network. We still need to figure out what we're going to be doing for the college football playoff. Obviously, I know Logical wants to stream Oklahoma and Alabama. I'm not sure what Red's plans are. I'll let you know in the community tab once those things come to light. But of course, on Sunday, I'm going to be streaming the Steelers and Lions. It's going to be a very fun game. Once again, thank you all so much for watching. Until we meet again, I will see you all in the next one. Take care, guys.